When giants come calling. Fleet Commander Zix-9 stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Edge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he gazed at the blue marble spinning slowly in the view screen. Earth looked so peaceful from this distance, so vulnerable. The Vorthan commander's scaled hide rippled with anticipation as he reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. Primitive projectile weapons, basic nuclear capability, fragmented political systems, he muttered to his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Keth-7. This will be over within a solar cycle. The invasion fleet stretched for kilometers in all directions. 8,900 ships of various classes hung in the void like a metallic storm cloud, ready to descend upon the unsuspecting world below. The Vorthan Empire had conquered 47 worlds in the past century, but none had been as strategically valuable as this one. Earth sat at the crossroads of 3 major hyperspace routes, making it a perfect staging ground for further expansion into this spiral arm of the galaxy. Commander, Keth-7's voice carried a note of uncertainty. Our long-range sensors are detecting some unusual activity on the planet's surface. There appears to be significant electromagnetic chatter. Zix-9 waved a dismissive claw. Probably their primitive communication networks spreading panic. Let them chatter. It will make no difference. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the readouts from the Deep Space Monitoring Array with growing dread. The xenobiologist had spent her career studying the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but she had never imagined first contact would come like this. The massive fleet had appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days ago, and now they hung above Earth like vultures. "How long do we have?" asked General Marcus Rodriguez, his weathered face grim as he studied the tactical display in the underground command center beneath Geneva. "Based on their approach vector and current position, I'd estimate 6 hours before they reach optimal attack range," Sarah replied, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. "Maybe less if they decide to rush." The past 72 hours have been a whirlwind of activity. The Global Defense Initiative, a secretive organization formed after the first serious UFO incidents decades ago, had activated protocols that most world leaders didn't even know existed. Across the planet, military forces were mobilizing, but everyone knew conventional weapons would be useless against technology that could cross interstellar space. "Ma'am," Captain Alina Volkov's voice crackled through the communications array from the International Space Station. "We're reading massive energy signatures from the alien fleet. They're powering up weapons systems." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her daughter safe in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. When she opened them, her expression had hardened with resolve. "General, I think it's time we showed our visitors that humanity didn't survive ice ages and world wars by being pushovers." High above, Zix-9 was reviewing the attack plan when his tactical officer, Neth-4, approached with a datapad. "Commander, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. They appear to be attempting communication." "What do they say?" "The translation algorithms are still processing, but the general message seems to be requests for peaceful dialogue and offers of surrender." Zix-9's mandibles clicked in what passed for Vorthan laughter. "How predictable. Ignore their pleas. Begin the assault." The first wave of Vorthan ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Their energy weapons began targeting major population centers, expecting to see the primitive buildings crumble and the inhabitants flee in panic. Instead, they were met with something unexpected. As the alien beams struck the cities, massive energy shields flickered to life around the downtown cores. The attacks that should have leveled entire districts instead splashed harmlessly against barriers of crackling blue energy. "What is this?" Zix-9 snarled, his confidence wavering for the first time. "Our intelligence said they had no shield technology." "Commander," Neth-4's voice was tight with confusion, "I'm reading massive power draws from the planet's surface. They appear to be routing energy from their entire electrical grid into defensive systems." On Earth, Sarah watched from the command center as cities around the world activated their emergency defenses. It had taken decades of secret international cooperation, reverse engineering technology from crashed UFOs, and the combined genius of the world's greatest scientists. But humanity had not been caught completely unprepared. Shield generators are holding at 60% capacity, reported a technician. But we can't maintain this for long. The power draw is already causing blackouts across entire continents. General Rodriguez nodded grimly. Phase 1 was just to get their attention. Elena, are you ready up there? From orbit, Captain Volkov's voice came through clearly despite the electromagnetic interference. Orbital defense platforms are online and locked onto targets. We've converted every satellite we could get our hands on, plus some surprise packages they won't see coming. The International Space Station had been transformed into a weapons platform over the past 3 days, its solar arrays replaced with jury-rigged particle beam emitters cobbled together from particle accelerators donated by CE Arnon and other research facilities. But that wasn't the real surprise. Launching kinetic packages, Elena announced. What the Vorthans saw next defied their understanding of primitive civilizations. Hundreds of objects launched from Earth's surface and orbital installations, but these weren't rockets or missiles. They were chunks of metal, concrete, and even compressed garbage, accelerated to incredible velocities by electromagnetic rail systems built into the planet's infrastructure. The makeshift kinetic weapons slammed into the first wave of Vorthan ships with devastating effect. Vessels designed to withstand energy weapons and conventional explosives were torn apart by chunks of debris moving at significant fractions of light speed. Impossible. Zix-9 roared as he watched his tactical display light up with casualty reports. They turned their refuse into weapons. But the surprises weren't over. As the Vorthan fleet regrouped and prepared for a more cautious second assault, every major city on Earth began launching what appeared to be conventional aircraft. Thousands of civilian planes, converted military jets, and even experimental craft rose to meet the alien threat. Sarah monitored the global response from her command post, her heart breaking as she watched the readouts. These weren't military pilots manning those aircraft. They were volunteers. Airline pilots, flight instructors, even civilian enthusiasts who had answered the call when their world's survival was at stake. "This is insane," whispered one of the technicians. "They're flying straight at ships that could vaporize them." "No," Sarah said quietly, watching as the human pilots began their attack runs. "This is what we do. We adapt, we improvise, and we never give up." The converted aircraft carried unconventional payloads. Instead of traditional weapons, they deployed clouds of metallic chaff, industrial chemicals, and even swarms of modified electronic devices designed to interfere with alien sensors and communications. The pilots flew their machines directly into the enemy formations, using their superior knowledge of atmospheric flight to outmaneuver the larger alien craft. Many didn't make it home. The space around Earth began to fill with the debris of human aircraft and the wreckage of alien ships. But for every human pilot lost, at least one Vorthan vessel was damaged or destroyed. Zix-9 found himself facing something he had never encountered in 40 years of military service, an enemy that fought with desperate creativity rather than superior technology. The humans were using their own planet as a weapon, turning everything from communication satellites to waste management systems into instruments of war. "Commander," Keth-7 reported, his voice shaken, "we've lost over 400 ships in the first engagement. The humans have somehow weaponized their entire infrastructure." "Regroup the fleet," Zix-9 ordered, his tactical mind racing. "We need to reassess. This is not the primitive world we were led to expect." On Earth, the brief victory was tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The alien fleet still numbered in the thousands, and humanity had expended much of its prepared defenses in the first exchange. "General," Sarah said, turning to Rodriguez, "we've bought ourselves some time, but they'll adapt to our tactics. We need to implement Protocol Zero." The general's face went pale. Protocol Zero was humanity's final contingency, a plan so desperate that it had been classified above the highest security levels. Are you certain? Once we activate it, there's no going back. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the regrouping alien fleet. They came here to conquer us, to make us slaves or worse. They chose this fight. She activated a secure communication channel that connected to bunkers and command centers around the world. This is Dr. Chen with authorization code Omega 77. All stations, prepare to implement Protocol Zero. Across the planet, hidden facilities began powering up systems that had been built in absolute secrecy over the past 3 decades. Deep beneath the ocean floors, in abandoned mine shafts, and in the hearts of mountains, humanity's ultimate insurance policy came online. High above, Zix-9 was studying the tactical reports when his sensors officer cried out in alarm. "Commander, massive energy readings from the planet's surface. Whatever they're doing down there, it's drawing power from sources we can't identify." The Vorthan fleet commander stared at the blue world below, realizing with growing unease that perhaps his empire's greatest strength, their tendency to underestimate primitive worlds, might have finally become their greatest weakness. On Earth, Sarah Chen stood in the command center, her hand hovering over the final activation switch. Around the world, her counterparts waited for her signal. When she pressed that button, humanity would reveal just how far they were willing to go to protect their home. "For Earth," she whispered and pressed the switch. What desperation breeds! The moment Dr. Sarah Chen activated Protocol Zero, Earth began to transform into something the Vorthan Empire had never encountered in their centuries of conquest. Deep beneath the planet's surface, systems that had been secretly constructed over 3 decades roared to life. Fleet Commander Zix-9 watched in growing horror as his sensors registered impossible energy readings from the planet below. "What are they doing down there?" he demanded, his 4 arms gesturing frantically at the tactical display. "Commander," Nephor's voice was tight with disbelief, "I'm reading massive geological disturbances across the planet's surface. It's as if they're tapping directly into their planet's core." They were. Protocol Zero represented humanity's most desperate and ingenious plan, the conversion of the entire planet into a massive weapons platform. Hidden geothermal plants that officially didn't exist began channeling energy from Earth's molten core. Secret underwater installations tapped into oceanic thermal vents. Even the planet's magnetic field had been weaponized through a network of hidden electromagnetic coils. Sarah monitored the activation sequence from the Geneva Command Center, her heart pounding as reports flooded in from around the world. London reports 90% power transfer. Tokyo is online. Moscow is channeling Arctic wind farms into the grid. General Rodriguez watched the energy readings climb to levels that should have been impossible. "Sarah, are you absolutely certain our calculations are correct? If we're wrong about the planetary stress tolerances, we'll tear our own world apart," Sarah finished grimly. "But if we do nothing, they'll strip mine it anyway after they finish with us. At least this way, we choose our fate." The first sign that Protocol Zero was working came when the Earth's magnetic field began to fluctuate. Vorthan ships found their navigation systems failing as the planet's magnetic signature shifted unpredictably. Then the real show began. Captain Elena Volkov, still commanding the weaponized space station, was the first to witness what happened next. "Command, you need to see this. The entire planet is lighting up like a Christmas tree." Across Earth's surface, massive structures that had been disguised as everything from shopping malls to sports stadiums began revealing their true purpose. What the aliens had dismissed as primitive architecture were actually the visible components of the largest weapons system ever constructed. The Atacama Desert in Chile erupted with a column of coherent energy that reached into space itself. The Sahara followed suit, then the Australian outback, the Siberian tundra, and the Canadian wilderness. Each beam was powered by the combined energy output of entire continents, channeled through superconducting networks hidden beneath the Earth's crust. Zix-9 had seen planet-killing weapons before, but never one where the planet itself was the weapon. Evasive maneuvers, he screamed, but there was nowhere to go. The energy beams tracked the Vorthan ships with impossible precision, guided by a global network of quantum computers that had been linked together to create the most powerful targeting system ever devised. The first beam caught a squadron of Vorthan cruisers off guard, and they simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field. They were converted to energy and scattered across the solar system as harmless radiation. How are they targeting us so precisely? Keth 7 demanded, his scaled hide pale with fear. Our stealth systems should make us invisible to their sensors. They're not using sensors, Neth 4 replied, his voice hollow with realization. They're using their entire population as a targeting network. He was right. Across Earth, 8 billion humans had become part of the defense system. Every smartphone, every computer, every electronic device on the planet had been networked together through hidden protocols built into their operating systems years earlier. The processing power of humanity's digital civilization was being used to calculate firing solutions and predict Vorthan movements. But the energy beams were only the beginning. As the Vorthan fleet scrambled to avoid the planetary weapons, they flew directly into humanity's second trap. The upper atmosphere itself had been weaponized. For decades, climate scientists had studied how to manipulate weather patterns. Now that research was put to a different use, the Earth's atmosphere became a weapon as targeted electromagnetic pulses created artificial lightning storms, while modified cloud seeding technology generated corrosive chemical clouds that ate through Vorthan hull plating. This is impossible. Zix-9 raged as his flagship's armor began to dissolve under the assault of weaponized weather. They turned their entire world into a war machine. Back on Earth, the cost of Protocol Zero was becoming apparent. Entire power grids were failing as energy was diverted to the planetary defense systems. Cities went dark, hospitals switched to emergency power, and transportation networks ground to a halt. But instead of panic, there was something the Vorthans couldn't understand: willing sacrifice. Sarah watched the global status reports with tears in her eyes. Reports were coming in from around the world of ordinary people, shutting down non-essential systems to feed more power to the defense grid. Families sitting in darkened homes, businesses closing their doors, entire communities going without electricity so that their planet's weapons could continue firing. Tokyo reports they're diverting power from life support systems in the subway tunnels, one technician reported. London says they shut down the underground rail network to free up more energy. Moscow is channeling power from their hospital district. Each report represented millions of people choosing to risk their own lives for the chance to save their world. General Rodriguez shook his head in amazement. In 40 years of military service, I've never seen anything like this. They're not just fighting for survival. They're fighting as one organism. The Vorthan fleet was learning the same lesson. As they regrouped and attempted a coordinated assault on the planetary weapons, they discovered that humanity had one more surprise: the civilian population itself. What looked like evacuation transports rising from Earth's major cities were actually converted airliners filled with volunteers. But these weren't pilots. They were ordinary citizens who had answered the call when their world needed them. Teachers, doctors, engineers, students, retirees, people from every walk of life who had never fired a weapon in anger but were willing to die for their home. The improvised fleet of civilian aircraft carried the most basic payload possible: themselves. They flew directly at the Vorthan ships in coordinated ramming attacks, their final transmissions broadcast to the surviving population below. This is Flight 447 out of New York. Tell my wife I love her. Flight 203 from Mumbai. For our children's future. Tokyo Flight 19. Let them know we chose this fate. Each civilian transport that struck a Vorthan ship represented dozens of lives lost, but their sacrifice was not in vain. The aliens had never faced an enemy willing to use suicide tactics on such a scale, and their formation cohesion began to collapse under the relentless attacks. Zix-9 found himself commanding a rapidly shrinking fleet as his ships fell victim to weapons, weather, and sheer human determination. "This is madness," he transmitted to his remaining vessels. "They're killing themselves to kill us." But it was Sub-Commander Keth 7 who put humanity's response into perspective. "No, Commander. They're not killing themselves. They're choosing to die free rather than live as slaves." The turning point came when the Vorthan fleet attempted to target Earth's population centers directly, hoping to break humanity's will by threatening their families. Instead, they triggered the final phase of Protocol Zero. Every major city on Earth revealed its ultimate secret: the underground bunkers and subway systems that were supposedly civilian shelters were actually the housing for the largest collection of nuclear weapons ever assembled. But these weren't the primitive atomic bombs the Vorthans expected. They were fusion devices designed to channel their energy through the same superconducting networks that powered the planetary defense system. "They're going to crack their own planet open," Neth-4 screamed as sensors registered the energy signatures of thousands of nuclear devices preparing to detonate simultaneously. Sarah Chen stood in the command center, her hand on the final activation switch. Around the world, her counterparts waited for the signal that would either save humanity or destroy it. "This is what desperation breeds," she said quietly. "We'll make our world uninhabitable before we let you have it." The threat was not a bluff. Humanity had calculated that they could survive a coordinated nuclear detonation if the energy was properly channeled, but the resulting radiation and geological instability would make Earth worthless to any occupying force. They were prepared to poison their own world to deny it to their enemies. Faced with an enemy willing to commit planetary suicide rather than surrender, Fleet Commander Zix-9 made the hardest decision of his military career. "All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance. Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace." The Vorthan retreat was not organized or dignified. Ships fled Earth's orbit in all directions, many suffering damage from the planetary weapons as they struggled to escape. Of the 8,900 vessels that had arrived to conquer a primitive world, fewer than 2,000 departed intact. As the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Sarah Chen finally allowed herself to collapse into her chair. Around the world, the planetary defense systems powered down, and the lights began to come back on in darkened cities. "Status report," General Rodriguez asked weakly. The numbers were sobering. 40 million people had died in the defense of Earth, mostly volunteers who had flown suicide missions or worked in facilities that had been targeted by alien weapons. Entire cities were without power, infrastructure was damaged, and the planet's ecosystem would take decades to recover from the stress of Protocol Zero. But humanity had survived, and they had sent a message to the galaxy that would echo for generations. Captain Alina Volkov's voice came through the communications array from orbit. "Command, I'm receiving a transmission from the retreating alien fleet. It's directed at Earth." "Put it through," Sarah said. Fleet Commander Zix-9's voice filled the command center, speaking in broken but understandable English. "People of Earth, we came to your world expecting to find a primitive species ripe for conquest. Instead, we found something we have never encountered in centuries of warfare, a species willing to destroy themselves rather than be enslaved." The transmission paused, and when it resumed, there was something like respect in the alien commander's voice. "You have won this day not through superior technology, but through superior will. The Vorthan Empire will remember this lesson. Your world will be marked as defended, and we will spread word throughout the galaxy that Earth is not to be trifled with." The final words of the transmission would become legendary in human history. "We came seeking to conquer a world. Instead, we learned what it means to face a species that values freedom more than life itself." Years later, as Earth rebuilt and expanded into space with technology reverse-engineered from the alien wrecks left behind, historians would debate whether humanity's victory had been worth the cost. But Dr. Sarah Chen, who became the first human ambassador to make contact with other species, never doubted the answer. When asked by an alien diplomat why humans had been willing to destroy their own world rather than surrender, she gave the response that would define humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy. Because some things are more important than survival. Freedom is one of them. And when you threaten our freedom, you discover what desperation breeds. Earth had become not just another world in the galaxy, but a symbol of defiance that would inspire other species to resist tyranny. The Vorthan miscalculation had awakened something in humanity that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. The age of human expansion had begun, built on the foundation of a single, simple truth: never underestimate a species fighting for its home.